you. Ladies and gentlemen, as it's obviously very hot this evening, please feel free to take your jackets off. So you'd be pleased to know that we've already covered items 1, feedback, sorry. Already covered items 1 to 8. So item 9 is to receive apologies. Do we have any apologies?
Madam Mayor, Councillor Phil Bailey.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, item 10 to receive declarations of... Oh, sorry. I'm working on it. I keep getting feedback. So item 10 is to receive declarations of interest.
Madam Mayor, personal interest, I'm clear of any city centre and also clear of Derby item. Item 41.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Item 11 is to approve the minutes of the meeting of the council meeting held on the 5th of March 2012.
Madam Mayor, I propose Councillor Paul Bayliss as the Labour leader of Derby City Council. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, I formally second Councillor Bayliss as the leader of Derby City Council.
Thank you. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, so we put that to the vote. All those in favour of Councillor Bayliss? I think that's carried.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I formally appoint the Council Cabinet for the year 2012-13? The first council I'd like to appoint is Councillor Ranjit Banway, Neighbours and Street Pride, and also Deputy Leader of the Council. Could I appoint Councillor Hardell Dinser, Planning, Environment and Public Protection? Councillor Fareed Hussain, Adults and Health. Councillor Martin Rawson, Children and Young People. Councillor Martin Repton, Leisure and Culture. Councillor Sarah Russell, Business, Finance and Democracy. And finally, Councillor Baggy Shanker, Housing and Advice.
So item 14 is to consider the report of the Strategic Director of Resources concerning a review of the role of member champions. Councillor Bayliss to move.
Could I formally move as printed, Madam Mayor?
Do I have a seconder, please?
Seconded.
Okay, thank you. So we move to the vote. Does anybody wish to speak on it? We move to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Item 15 is to consider a report from the Monitoring Officer concerning a new standards regime. And it's Councillor Bayliss to move.
Could I move as printed, Madam Mayor? We've all been consulted on this at some length, so formally move as printed. Thank you.
Okay, seconder, please. Anyone wish to speak? All those in favour? It's carried. Item 16 is to consider the following notices of motion prior to consideration of constitutional appointments. So, item 1, Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Congratulations on your appointment. I'm sure you'll do an excellent job of keeping us unruly members in check. I know it's warm in here tonight, so I'll be really brief. This is the first of two very important motions that I will be proposing this evening to right two very dreadful wrongs. The previous Tory and Lib Dem administrations took some pretty awful decisions whilst in office, but none so shameful as the abolition of the Personnel Committee, which showed how out of touch they really are. This was a slap in the face of our employees, the very people we rely so heavily upon to deliver the services we, as elected representatives, seek to shape. I sat as a member of the public in the council chamber back in January 2010 and witnessed the most shameful abdication of responsibility. The Lib Dem administration capitulated to the demands of management and overturned a decision of the Personnel Committee which had been painstakingly debated for 3 days. The committee unanimously came down in favour of the workers, but their recommendation was disregarded within a matter of minutes, and with that the Personnel Committee was gone. It is clear from their actions in 2010 that the rights of our employees don't matter to the Lib Dems or Tories, but they certainly matter to Labour. They've always mattered to Labour, and under this administration, we will ensure our employees have a voice again. The Personnel Committee considered issues of great importance, which we, as elected representatives, have a fiduciary obligation to listen to, discuss and decide upon. We will take up this role and work with trade unions, which I know is a dirty term for some people in this chamber, to ensure that the conditions for our employees are the best that they can be. We will offer leadership to this local authority in place of weakness and shameful decisions provided by the previous administrations. The reintroduction of this committee will send a clear message that this Labour-run administration is prepared to listen and is in touch with its employees and understands their needs. We are passionate about delivering services to local people and recognise the importance of a workforce that is fully engaged. That is why I commend this motion to you and urge you to support it.
Madam Mayor, can I just also extend my congratulations to you for today's election as the Mayor. I was honoured to be asked to second this motion on the basis that I've observed these proceedings over the last 4 years, and it was with a great deal of dismay that I saw this committee disbanded. I think it's, speaking as a senior trade unionist in this city, I think it's wholly right that the employees of the council should have the ultimate right of appeal, particularly on disciplinary issues and restructuring issues that will affect their long-term jobs prospects, to be heard by the board of directors of this authority, namely us. So it's a great privilege to be able to second this motion and put a real wrong, right. I urge all members to support this motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Employee Appeals Subcommittee was again shamefully removed in January 2011 by the then Cabinet member. The actual wording of one section of the motion read, to approve the removal of current right of appeal to a panel of members in favour of appeals being determined by senior officers. I don't know about you, Madam Mayor, but I've never heard something so unabashedly shameful and reprehensible. Unbelievably removing our employees' right of appeal to an independent panel, allowing the same body to hear the appeal as made the original decision. Where is the fairness or sense in that? This was the Tories' way of making it easier for their employees to be removed from their posts during the restructures. And they were aided and abetted by their partners in crime, the very willing Liberal Democrats. Councillor Bayliss proposed an amendment to remove the element denying workers the right of appeal to elected members. This was voted down by Tories and Liberal Democrats in this chamber, 19 of whom I believe are here tonight. And I think you should all be very thoroughly ashamed of the decision you made that night. This evening, you have an opportunity to go some way to making it right. It appears your condemned colleagues in London have taken a leaf out of your book as well and decided to make it far easier nationally for managers to remove employees from their employment with the introduction of the Enterprise and Regulatory Reform Bill. This bill will make it far more difficult for workers to claim for unfair dismissal and even introduce fees for taking matters to employment tribunals. So a combination of having no employee appeals at the council and the government's scandalous plans will leave our employees with nowhere to turn. We will not allow that to happen in Derby. Morale of staff in the public sector across the country is already at an all-time low due to the dramatic funding cuts forced on us by central government. People are fearful for their jobs, and decisions of this magnitude, ultimately whether people should retain their jobs or not, should be heard by elected representatives and not senior officers. We need to ensure employees of Derby City Council have faith in the system and their voice is quite rightly and fairly heard. We have an opportunity to make amends for the disastrous decision the opposition made in 2010 and 11. Vote for fairness, vote for our workers and support this motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I second that. Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers? In which case we will move to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Item 3 is Councillor Bayliss to propose.
Could I just move it as printed, Madam Mayor?
Seconder?
Madam Mayor, I second that. Thank you.
Does anybody wish to speak? In which case we will move to... Oh, apologies. Councillor Ashburn.
The proposal is that the chairs of the Overview and Scrutiny Commissions be no longer specified as being from members of the minority parties. I object to this. The point of the Overview and Scrutiny Commissions is that, as the name suggests, to check the actions of the controlling group. In order to achieve this, the chair should be from a minority group, or otherwise the controlling group will simply be able to vote their own members into the bodies. I appreciate that the Labour Party wishes to chair all these bodies, but I believe that it should be a minority body that a person should do this. We have just heard Councillor Russell objecting to appeals being dealt with by the body who made the original decision. This is exactly what is being proposed here. I propose that we should vote this down. We should not have this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Ashburn has made the point that I wanted to make, which was picking up a point that Councillor Russell made. It's morally unjust, unfair and disgraceful to have the same person scrutinising as made the decision in the first place. And that's as plain as the nose on your face. While you might have the right and the power to do this, it is morally wrong. Thank you.
Councillor Roberts?
Thank you, Chair. Could I immediately say that 2 years ago, or maybe 3, if Councillor Ashburn or Councillor Allen had supported the view that I put forward at the time, we would have seen that kind of fairness applied. But they didn't. They grabbed everything that they could, and through us, the bones, and boy oh boy, were they the bare bones. They gave us the very limit of the least that they could give to us, and now they've got the nerve to come up, because you have to hand it to them, before the election, when they knew they were standing on the edge of the abyss, waiting for somebody to say to them, you need to take a bold step forward. There's a joke in there, folks. I don't want you to get too excited, but when we get to it, what did they do? They looked towards self-preservation by saying, you know what we did before when we took all the seats? If we don't put a rule in quick, the Labour Party will do the same to us. Because every now and again, unfortunately, that's what happens. Fairness sometimes goes out of the window because what we do is we look after our own. Well, they looked after their own, but when they saw they were going to lose, they tried to look after themselves. It won't wash. It's no good standing up here, wringing their hands and trying to say, Councillor Russell said something about something entirely different. And you, and both the Tories and the Liberal Democrats, should be ashamed of the actions that they took in terms of the Personnel Committee and in terms of the way they dealt with the appeals procedure for employees. Absolutely ashamed. And what we were seeking to do was to put right a very serious wrong that was perpetrated on our staff and on the democratic process of this council. But what they're claiming now is that by putting that wrong right, somehow it justifies their crying dog in the manger, oh dear, you're doing to us what we did to you. Well, I'm sorry. That's one of the facts that Robin Wood mentioned this morning in the speech when he was talking about the deputy mayor. And he said, that's politics, folks. Well, I'm afraid that's what you've got to face. This is politics, folks. Hard luck.
Madam Mayor, I do find it rich when we hear those sorts of speeches that we've just heard from the Liberal councillor Ashburner, because if we look at and examine what's gone off over the last 4 years, the Liberals and the Conservatives have maintained their position of power by, to use the term, propping each other up. And 2 years ago, as Councillor Bayliss referred to in the Evening Telegraph, as I'm afraid I still call it, of last Thursday night, you know, the Tories sustained their minority power by the Liberals, and they got in return the chair and the vice chairmanship positions. So I'm quite clear. To use a cricketing metaphor, on the 3rd of May, the citizens of Derby lifted the finger on the coalition that existed prior to us taking control today, and the citizens of Derby gave the Liberals and Tories out. And it's now our turn to go into bat, and hopefully that will be a very long, effective and efficient innings that delivers real quality services to the citizens of Derby and the vulnerable, elderly and families that exist out there, and they've not thought twice about cutting the services of. So this is quite a ridiculous idea from Councillor Ashburner, and I'm against it.
Councillor Bayliss, as we've had a debate on that matter, do you wish to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we've heard the debate. A few years ago, the Tories and Liberals did yet another one of their little deals to keep Labour out of power. And then now they find a few years later we've done exactly what they did to us in return. Well, I think we've got a mandate here. We've got a mandate to rule the city. And to describe Labour members and not able to hold the executive account, you obviously miss the Labour members talking in this chamber, speaking in this chamber. And I assure you they will hold their members to account, no matter what political party they are. They're effective debaters. They all speak in this chamber very effectively, and they will speak in the council rooms and meeting rooms that will go in the future. So I move to the vote, Madam Mayor.
All those in favour? That's carried.
Madam Mayor, on a point of order.
Oh.
A point of order. You've taken several votes this evening and asked for those in favour, and quite clearly there was a majority. But you have not at any point asked for the votes against. We are democratically elected. We do have the right to vote against or abstain. And I would ask you in future, and perhaps on that vote, that you allow the whole council to vote. In other words, ask for those in favour and those against. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wood. Be gentle with me. It's my first night. I do apologise, and it's a point of order which will be taken on board. I apologise. So I would now like to ask if there is anybody against that motion. I believe that means it's still carried. So item 4 is Councillor
deal with this matter. I think all members should have circulated to them the latest proposals. There are a number of uncontested changes, which I propose that we'll deal with first. We'll then go on to deal with nominations for those posts for which there are more than one candidate. There'll be a vote on that, and at the end of that, we will take a final vote on all the amended issues. To start off, it's the uncontested changes, and I believe, Madam Mayor, that Councillor Bayliss certainly has some. I don't know if the other leaders do.
Yes, we've got two amendments to make. Firstly, regards to the Planning Control Committee, we would like to add Councillor Robin Turner to that and remove Councillor Balvea Sanders. That's the first one. The second one is regarding the Disabled People's Diversity Forum. Councillor Paul Pegg is somebody to go on there, and we'd like to remove Councillor Anne McDonald. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Madam Mayor, there are just a couple from us. Councillor Webb is already a member of the Liversidge Trust when we get to that, so we wish to replace that nomination with Mr. Steve Hassel. That's on outside bodies. That's part of this paper, isn't it? Oh, later item, I beg your pardon. And neighbourhood boards are first, aren't they, on this?
Neighbourhood boards are the next item after that. At the moment, we're dealing with appointments to committees. It's item 17 on the agenda. So I think on that basis, Madam Chair, we then move to those posts that require a vote.
All those in favour, please show. Thank you. All of those against? Thank you. So we now move on to item 18, which is the neighbourhood boards. And I'm going to take them by ward and ask for nominations.
Yes, Madam Chair, I suggest that that's the appropriate way to deal with it. If there are more than one nomination for any of those posts, then there will be a vote.
So can I have nominations for Abbey Ward, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. This will be Councillor Asaf Afzal.
Any further nominations? We'll move on to Anastry Ward. Do we have any nominations?
Councillor Hickson.
Thank you. Any further nominations? Thank you. Alveston Ward.
Councillor Linda Winter, Madam Mayor.
Do we have any further nominations? Thank you. Arboretum Ward.
Councillor Shiraz Khan, Madam Mayor.
Any further nominations? Thank you. Leigh Greaves.
Councillor Nater.
Any further nominations? Thank you. Bolton.
Councillor Ranjit Ranway, Madam Mayor.
Any further nominations? Thank you. Chuddesdon.
Councillor Paul Campbell, Madam Mayor.
Any further nominations? Thank you. Chaniston.
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. Any further nominations? Darley.
Councillor Martin Repton, Madam Mayor.
Any further nominations? Thank you. Derwent.
Councillor Margaret Redfern, Madam Mayor.
Any further nominations? Thank you. Ditlover.
Councillor Ashburner.
Any further nominations? Thank you. Mackworth.
Councillor John Whitley, Madam Mayor.
Any further nominations? Thank you. Mickleover.
Councillor Jones.
Any further nominations? Thank you. Normanton.
Councillor Harden Windsor.
Any further nominations? Thank you. Oakwood.
Councillor Harwood.
Any further nominations? Thank you. Syntham.
Councillor Bailey Shanker.
Any further nominations? Thank you. And Spondon.
Councillor Jennings.
Any further nominations? Thank you. So the motion is to approve the appointments and to agree with 2 ward councillors that the other 2 ward councillors act as vice chair. All those in favour? Thank you. Do we have any against? So item 19 is to approve the schedule of meetings.
Again, Madam Mayor, I believe a revised list of schedule of meetings has been circulated to members.
All those in favour? Anybody against? Thank you. So item 20 is to consider a notice of motion. It's prior to consideration of appointments to outside bodies and charities. And please note that it's Councillor Hickson to propose and Councillor Bayliss to second.
Sorry, this is...
Item 20.
Yeah, this is the Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a motion brought forward to replace the moribund East Midlands LGA, Derbyshire LGA, which hasn't met for 2 years, and to replace it with a new forum. An inaugural meeting took place with all the 10 authorities in the region, and it was agreed unanimously at that meeting to disband the old body and to appoint the new one. And that will consist of nominees of the leader of the council and the chief executive from each of the 10 authorities across Derbyshire.
Thank you. Councillor Bayliss to second.
Yeah, could I formally second Madam Mayor and move to the vote? Thank you.
Okay, all of those in favour? Thank you. Anybody against? It's carried.
following way. There are, I understand, some amendments to the proposals that were circulated earlier. We take those from the various leaders. After that, there are a number of contested nominations. We take each of those in turn, and then finally we'll move to the approval of the formal motion. So the first aspect is to take any proposed amendments.
Yes, there's two for us. First point, I think, is going to be covered again by Councillor Hickson regarding Liversidge. I think the membership actually sorts itself out in terms of the appointments. But the other amendment we wish to make is regarding responding and leaving need. We wish to withdraw our candidate, Mr. Ashboggy, which means that Councillor Holton will not be opposed. Thank you.
Yes, just two amendments, Madam Mayor. The first is on charities on page 1. Elizabeth Turner Charity, we withdraw the nomination for Councillor Webb as it's on the as listed on the paper. And the second is Liversidge Trust, where Councillor Webb is already a member, doesn't need to be, or is already a trustee and doesn't need to be nominated by this council. And we propose in his place Mr. Steve Hassel. Thank you.
amended